Right, everyone, let's do this. I know it's public holiday tomorrow, and I know you want to get out of here. Okay, I've gone through the recordings, and I see that despite us having spent quite a bit of time looking at the specific bits of content on chapters 3 and 4, that we haven't got recordings, and I think that's where the confusion is last week. So I'm going to push forward and finish 6 and 7, and then we'll come back to 3 and 4 and also get full sets of recordings on those. Right, so insofar as your exams are concerned, I don't know if the exam briefs have been loaded. Is anyone aware whether the exam briefs were loaded or not?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Not aware, Chris. Okay, let me just check this side as well. So you'll see the moment the exam briefs, and they must be pretty close to being loaded. We'll go. I have a very specific process in terms of preparing you for the exam. It works incredibly well, and we'll get to it when we get there. Let me have a glance quickly and see what's here. Yeah. Okay, it is out. So guys, yeah, unfortunately I can't, oh, for Pete's sake, this is now something new. I cannot share it with you guys because it's blocked. We don't have permission to share it. So yeah, I'm not, well, I know what I'll do. I'll sort something out with it. So you can download it for yourself. I just want to see, okay, yeah, already I can see some of these that won't be questions because I've used them in my prep that in my development that I've done for honors, so I'm not worried. And for postgraduate, yeah, we'll look at it. I will make sure that each of these questions, each of these case studies has its own set of questions. There's a very clear process, and yeah, generally, and I don't promise this because the truth remains is I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm pretty good at predicting what will be in the exam, and sometimes up to 80–90% accuracy. So there's a very specific process, and we'll make sure that we follow that process. Again, sorry, let me just download this. Just help that person in, please. Right. My apologies. Just give me a fraction of a second. Right, let's look at this. I'm going to close that. You don't need to see that. You don't need to see that either. Yeah, we'll make sure that we do our normal process with that. Right, so I've shared a couple of documents with you guys, a couple of articles with you guys today, in particular to look at some of the tough industries that are out there. Tell me why it's so tough for companies to survive the motor industry. And Chris, you can start because this is where you find yourself. Because we're well aware, sorry about this, Chris, that Volvo and Volvo, Audi, and BMW are closing dealerships across the country. And I think, yeah, Mercedes has been spared that, but I can't believe much longer. Chris, tell me why it's tough to survive here.
Yeah, Doc, this is quite an article close to my heart because it does. It's not the first time we've spoken about this or I read this. Look, the Chinese brands, I mean, there's another, I think another 13 or something coming into the country, each offering their own models, and they definitely eat into our business. So what these cars offer is build quality is not the same as the premium brand, obviously, but these cars
fuel consumption is shocking.
Fuel consumption is horrible. I mean, I've got a colleague who's the marketing director for Moda. They've had two
Yeah.
cars where customers pull them off the floor, and 800 kilometers down the road, the black suspension snaps in half.
Yeah.
So these things are not built to last, or not built well at all, but they offer everything our cars offer at literally a quarter of the price. And
But I
that's what
see one of
attracting
the
customers.
newer ones that are coming to South Africa gives you a 10-year warranty.
Yeah, so the Cherry
Yeah.
offers you a 10-year warranty on the engines, for example, but
Yeah.
only for the first buy of the car, and it must be brand new.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a gimmick. No one's going to drive the car for 10 years. Well, here and
No.
there you'll find someone, but your average driver, I think the turnaround time with Westbank is 42 months for finance deals. So every 42 months, people swap their cars in any case. So
Yep.
it's just a gimmick in my view, but it definitely eats into the biggest markets, or all the markets. Even Toyota suffers from them, not as much as us, but their biggest problem is their own competitors. They want market share. So I think they wanted 150 dealers. Chery, for example, wanted 150 dealers by the end of 2025. That's the same as Toyota. Toyota's got 150 dealers, but they sell 10,000 cars.
Yeah.
The Chinese don't care. They just want market share. And some of our dealers have Chery, for example, as a multi-franchise. And they sit with where customers come to them with offer to purchases where the cars are under dealer billing, which means the dealer's cost.
Yeah.
And they just can't sustain themselves. So that's their biggest problem. But customers buy these cars, and
And the average person doesn't know this.
The average person doesn't know that, these things are just, they fine for maybe a year or two, but after that, the car's going to cost you more than what it's worth, in my opinion.
Yeah, talking about Toyota, this is from Toyota.
Yeah, I read this too. Like I said, they eat into everyone's, the pie in the country is only this week. I think we sell 500,000 cars a year.
Yeah.
And the pie just gets smaller and smaller for everyone. And that's why we, for example, all the premium brands close dealers, because we do not need 40, 50 dealers anymore. We can survive and be more profitable with less dealers. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, your salespeople will find a job almost immediately. We know that about car sales. I mean, a good salesman is snapped up immediately.
Exactly. It's not a problem getting a job in the motor industry to sell cars.
Yeah, no, it's not difficult. Yeah, and this is the growth. Can I also just say, please not underestimate the Indian brand as well, guys. I think it's the biggest growing brand in the country in terms of their own sales, jumping about 39%. I read an article. Yeah, it's that Scorpio 4x4, apparently a really good 4x4. I still think the Indian cars are better than the Chinese cars.
I wanted to say the exact same thing. If you want to buy a cheaper brand, buy an Indian brand. Don't buy Chinese.
Yeah, they're very good. I mean, is it the Scorpio that I'm thinking about? Is it?
Yeah, it's a Scorpio. It's a Scorpio, and I think what's the other one? Yeah, no, it's a Scorpio.
Yeah, and it's a 4x4 one. Is it Mahindra? Hey,
Mahindra, yeah.
Yeah, and it's this guy. So we know that this is really good. I mean, this is exceptional, far better, and its off-road capability is astonishing. And yeah, and you can pick that up for 500 something thousand. I mean, it's a far better option, and you get proper off-road capability. So yeah, I think it's a changed world. Any comments from anyone else? Who drives a Chinese vehicle? Anyone drive an Indian vehicle? Who would be too scared to buy either of those? I wouldn't buy a Chinese vehicle at this stage, to be honest with you, but I could see myself in a Mahindra. Okay. So yeah, it's wonderful to sit in a class where people want to contribute, and that's sarcasm in case any of you missed it. I'll come back to the other two articles and we'll chat about those when we get there. So yeah, so there's a definite question that will come from this in the exam. It's always going to be Porter's five forces. So most of you would have seen Porter's five forces multiple times already. And there's also one, the key success factors. And my apologies when I keep referring to it as critical success factors. That's how I was taught it. So when we look at the industry environment, the first thing that we'll spend a bit of time on, the first set of objectives, will be finding out what an industry is. How do we define an industry? Looking particularly at the five forces and that term I'd already mentioned, key success factors. And we'll chat a bit about industry life cycle. The marketers often know more about this than I do. Yeah, Cole, which German have you got? You've got a BMW, isn't it, Boyo? And then intra-industry analysis, and we'll look at how industry dynamics have changed, where traditional competitors now essentially start collaborating, start sharing technologies, because it's one of those industries where the technology advances so rapidly that we've seen that one brand cannot track all technology. So there's a lot of sharing of technologies. I'm not going to go through that one, guys. I'm not going to get too worried about that. So the first thing that we need to do, and the first challenging thing, is to decide what the industry is. So do we define it narrowly? Do we define it broadly? So if we think of Apple, if you want to define the industry broadly, you would include everything from their phones right through to their tablets, right through to their laptops. We could argue that's broadly defined. Renault, any comments about Renault? Parts I know are very expensive. Chris, Renault, what do you think?
I don't want to badmouth other brands, but it's a much better buy,
than a Chinese vehicle, without a single shadow of a doubt. There's nothing wrong with Renault. I see the new Duster is immaculate. It is really a thing of beauty.
And they currently stock 95% of all their parts in the country. So they
prices have gone down.
Yeah, the prices have gone down, but it's a better buy. So
yeah. No, so there's some good advice, guys. Yeah. Guys, so in terms of the industry, narrowly, that would be just the phones. Broadly, it would be everything. And also we end up with a situation, if you define it too narrowly, where do you put a tablet? Is a tablet a laptop wannabe, or is it a extension of a phone? Any comments on that? Where do we place the tablet in an industry? Is it a laptop or is it a phone? Or is it a big phone? Go, Chris.
Hybrid?
It's a hybrid between. So we're stuck in terms of defining our industry. So we have to, first of all, sort out our industry in order to understand who our competitors are. We've also seen where industries have had the blurring. So, and for me, that is the iPad, the tablets. For me, a tablet is could be used as a laptop, but let's be honest, it could also be used as a phone. Now, obviously, it's a massive phone, and it's not logical. It's easy to use it as a laptop. Other things we need to consider in deciding our industry, and remember, when we decide our industry, we have to decide who our competitors are. So do we look at it from a horizontal scope, the range of products? So do we argue that the auto industry, let's say Volkswagen, is everything from, I don't know, the up is still in the country, but from a Polo Vivo right through to a Touareg? Or do we put Bakkies separately? Do we put the Touareg and other SUVs separately? Oh, wonderful. Yes, Chris has given you wonderful. We've got two Suzukis at home, amazing vehicles. Okay, both my kids, my youngsters have Suzukis. Fantastic. Guys, and
Japanese.
then, yeah, Kyle, go for it, boya.
Japanese.
Japanese, yeah, it is Japanese. Although the Suzukis we sell in South Africa are generally manufactured in India, but that is good. And remember, you've got this wonderful arrangement now with Toyota. So you also get Suzukis that are Toyotas and Toyotas that are Suzukis. But you're right, Kyle, and there's nothing wrong with Japanese vehicles. Honestly, okay, I mean, my youngster has okay, he got it when he was 17 and a half, but he has a in Suzuki Ignis, and it is fantastic.
Okay,
So
they have the second least warranty claims of any car on earth.
I know. I mean, who beats them? Is it Honda?
Honda, yeah.
Yeah, because Honda and Suzuki initially were in a partnership. Because Hondas and Suzukis were sold from the same dealerships. In Maritzburg, they still do. Yeah. So I think, guys, we sound like car salesmen. But then again, can I just say, and I apologize so much, that I did my master's and PhD in the auto industry, so I tend to default to it, and I know people get irritated when I do it, and I apologize. Hi, Steph, how are you? Did you get my message?
Yes, yeah, good. Thanks. And you had Henny, I did get your message.
Okay, yeah, you know why. You know why.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sorry, man.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I love it. You told me that beforehand. I love it.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, guys, and then do we look at it from a from a vertical perspective? Now, essentially, do we base it around our supply chain and what aspects of supply chain do we consider to be as part of our industry, etc. Most modern manufacturers, and remember when I say manufacturer, I use that term loosely because most modern manufacturers are assemblers. So Apple is an assembler. Any one of the car dealers is an assembler. I mean, the manufacturing happens elsewhere. It happens, yeah, in places that are outsourced. And then the geographic scope. Yeah, what do we consider our industry? Do we consider competition in South Africa, or do we consider global competition? And it depends on the level in the organization that you are. In terms of, if you're at a business level or a corporate level, let me just clarify that. We'll do that in second semester. This is an interesting one, and this is lots of criticism. It argues that every industry will have certain key success factors, as I keep defaulting critical success factors. If I said to you the fast food industry, and I'm not going to be more specific than the fast food industry, what would be the critical success factors, the key success factors? You can see what I was taught back in the day. What are the key success factors in the fast food industry?
Speed.
Speed. So turnaround time, absolutely one of them, non-negotiable. Other critical success factors. As I think good quality ingredients, non-negotiable.
I was going to say pricing and cost can also be important.
Value for money, yes. So you've got to have great input costs or really good efficiencies, but also great value for money. An interesting one in South Africa, guys, is foot traffic. It's quite interesting when we look at where our most busy outlets are. They're near taxi ranks, they're near city centers. So foot traffic is another one that we could consider a critical success factor. What would we consider to be the critical success factors if you are in, and I'm going to use the term, the smart device industry? If you're an Apple or a Samsung or a Huawei or I don't know if there are others that people use. What are the key success factors in that kind of industry?
Would functionality be one of them?
So functionality, ease of use, non-negotiable. Okay. It has to be good quality. And when we think of good quality, with the expectations in terms of cameras and those kind of battery life are key elements. The other one that, before I jump in, anything else?
Innovation.
Constant innovation. If you look at the levels of innovation and the amount of innovation and how rapid the innovation is, non-negotiable. I think the one thing we also see in modern times, and you know, it'll be referred differently to from a theoretical perspective, but I think cloud technology, unless you now have some sort of cloud-based system where your different devices can interlink, you cannot compete in that industry. So the cloud is an essential part of essentially surviving that particular industry. So when we look at these key success factors, there are a couple of questions that we need to ask. The first one is, what do customers want? And it was quite interesting, guys, in terms of your cell phone, and Nomasanto, you also said that. You spoke about functionality. So you have to understand what your customer expectations are. And generally, those customer expectations will drive your own thought processes. The other thing that we have to consider is, let's be honest, what are our competitors offering? Yeah, it's insane in terms of the smart device industry, in the auto industry. People are so aware what the competitors put in. And you honestly, I have Samsung, and I'm very happy with Samsung, but my son would give anything to hang on to his Apple, and his Apple from his laptop to his tablet right through to his phone as well. And I think you need to understand that whenever there is any slight movement, when there is some suggestion that Apple might launch something, Samsung is already on it, looking to add their own new tech. Who are the Apple people here?
Me.
One Apple person? How do you know when somebody is using an Apple?
They tell you.
They will tell you, Nomasanto.
Oh, wow.
Unprofessional. Go for Kelly. Are you also Apple? Hi, Kelly. How are you? Also Apple.
Hi, sir. Yes, I'm an Apple user as well.
Very cool. Any Samsung people here?
Yeah.
Okay, Samsung as well. Only 2 Samsung people. Who are the Huawei people here? The people who are being spied on by the Chinese Communist Party, according to the American Congress. Huawei. I have a kid who has a Motorola. I didn't even know that Motorola. Okay, Huawei, Motorola, and I would imagine some people still have Nokia. Am I missing out on some of them, or do some of you not have phones? Okay, guys, and then the last one, you've also got to base what you provide on your own unique resources. Remember, we would talk about your core competencies. We spoke about those core competencies when we looked at evaluating mission statements. So there are a couple of things that people have issues with, and I disagree with every single one of them. I think this is a criticism that is questionable, but we have to look at it because it's in the textbook and we have to discuss it. And this is the kind of thing that you could have a real critical discussion around. So it talks about that the key success factors are difficult to identify. Says who? Says who? If you're in the industry, if you've listened to your customers, if you've checked your competitors, if you've checked your own resources, you should have that. It's also, the second one is to the suggestion that we don't know what the effect is on the industry. For me, the key success factors are the non-negotiables. Unless you've ticked those boxes, you cannot in any way, shape, or form expect to compete. Yeah, it also talks about basing your own competitive advantage on key success factors. But I think that's why companies have dynamic capabilities, and also, yeah, that you essentially, by changing all the time your products, etc., you could have a competitive advantage. But you're advancing, in my mind, when you innovate the key success factors. And then also you might not be able to keep in step with the industry dynamics. And that's why we have dynamic capabilities. So each of these can in fact be counted. But I suppose when we look at it simplistically, Gemma, criticism holds a little bit of water and the bucket is leaking, in my opinion. So when we look at the key success factors in mature and declining industries, give me examples of mature and declining industries. Examples of mature and declining industries, industries that will not be around for much longer. Mature or declining industries, industries that will not be around for much longer.
Tobacco manufacturing, maybe?
Yeah, well, tobacco manufacturing is an interesting one because in the postgraduate diploma that we have, I've set an assignment and I'm using British and American tobacco to show the kind of innovations that they have. And it's quite difficult for me to do that because I'm an anti-smoker, a never smoker, and never will smoke person. But there's some innovations, but we see the move to vaping. So I think traditional cigarette smoke, yeah, as a mature, I don't know. I think people will smoke forever, although we hope that the numbers decline. But I work on a full-time campus, and every year we seem to have more smokers. Obviously, a lot more vapors as well. Anyone here on the call smoke? Anyone vape? Any vapors here? Because people admit to vaping, which is as bad as smoking. Oh, a class of non-smokers and non-vapors. That's good. And also people who might not be telling the truth. The second thing, okay, so for me, mature industries, yeah, I think declining industries, people aren't going to buy DVD or Blu-ray discs anymore. So you're not going to see Blu-ray discs and those kinds of things. I think that the idea that your box type standalone computers, that isn't mature. I think a lot of people are defaulting to laptops, although I must admit my kids have gaming computers, so they still have got standalone computers. I don't know whether we can think of any other maturing industries, guys, offhand. I think the taxi industry is maturing, and also for me, the industry that I think is going to decline somewhere in the near future is the courier industry. Go for it, Chris.
I wanted to say something like the magazine industry or newspapers.
Magazine, yeah, I mean, newspapers. I'm in Pietermaritzburg, the Natal Witness, which is apparently the country's oldest newspaper. If you're lucky to get 8 pages a day, that is a lot. So that is a declining, almost dead industry because people have simply just moved to electronic news. A very nice example, a very, very nice example. So in terms of what can you do to try and survive? Yeah, so you have to bring the costs down. You also have to make sure that you find niche markets. So you often have people who we consider late adopters and you focus on them. And then you start adding extra bits and pieces to it as complementary services. I would imagine that DSTV hit a maturity level and then started offering that you can access a variety of things, including Netflix and Amazon and Disney via your Netflix, via your DSTV decoder, although you should be streaming it directly anyway. And those were the extra bits and pieces they started to offer. And then, yeah, I think you have to have some sort of innovation by moving into newer markets. You know, people, my concern often when we say this, it's a form of dumping almost. And Africa has always been the place where you go and dump the kind of stuff that you can't sell elsewhere. Yeah, in-game, mature or declining industries. I think, first of all, you find these pockets where you will find odd bits of customers interested. You'll have a very much a niche strategy focusing around these kinds of individuals, and you start off when you start withdrawing from aspects of the industry. Yeah, so this is the Samsung one in technology intensive. So the first one is innovation. So whenever we see intellectual property, it's registering new patents. I think I shared with you guys the companies that registered the most patents this year because we've done innovation, haven't we? Have we discussed that? Gosh, I can't remember. Have we discussed who the companies? Chris, did we do this?
Yeah, I think we did it was early on.
I thought we did this. I thought we did this. Samsung always at the top, LG second. I'm sure we did this. I'd lecture quite a lot, so I can't recall offhand. And it's part of that process. And then you add on complementary products. And if you think of Apple, it's everything from the cloud, and then you get those wonderful opportunities to get free software, and it gives you a platform where you can use your apps, etc. So complementary is something that allows you to use your product better. So complementary in terms of a smart device would be the apps that you can use on there. And then codification. So you try and create code that cannot be copied. And it's really about protecting your own tacit knowledge. It's about protecting your own patents. Because I can tell you now, the moment Apple launches a brand new phone, someone from Samsung will buy it and they'll reverse engineer it. And then turnaround time. I think the key thing is, and the strategic term is first mover advantage. You would want to reduce the time between an idea and an innovation appearing on the shelf or within your product. So the lead time, the turnaround time between idea and product reaching the shelves has to be very, very small. And it's about first mover advantage. Yeah, the kinds of things that you do to survive. Yeah, you get allies, you get suppliers and competitors. I spoke about how in the auto industry, which is a technology intensive industry, how competitors have started working together simply because it's impossible for you to even try and imagine going it on your own. And then also looking for new markets, finding new industries. I mean, if you think of what the iPad did, it created an entire new industry. And then also just making sure that people understand what our future successes and the importance of innovation in those future successes. If we look at non-for-profits, and I think when we look at South Africa, this is the one industry where we see serious challenges. I think we see money now not being given to not-for-profits or NGOs as it was in the past because governments run out of money. Anyone in a not-for-profit or an NGO? Everyone in private business, I'm assuming? Rama, what do you do?
I volunteer with an organization that helps people all over the world, Islamic Relief.
Okay. But is it related to Gift of the Givers?
Yes, they are very similar, but they are different organizations.
I mean, it's the toughest thing to survive because the grants are not there anymore.
That's true. The
And you
easiest.
rely on the goodness of
But
people.
yes. And we do like fundraisers and things like that to be able to um ask for donations and things.
Very cool. Very cool, Rama. That's very cool, actually. Yeah. And well done for
Thank you.
doing that. Really well
Thank
done for
you.
doing that. Okay, so how do we survive as an NFP? I think the first one is this idea of strategic piggybacking, and you have to find an additional activity to make up the differences. So Rama would say that they would go and do fundraising, and whatever the fundraising is. I mean, we know that that hospice, for example, has their own shop. The SPCA has some sort of SPCA shop as well. And you have to find an additional way of actually getting money. And then the second one is, although you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, how much money will people pay? And there's always going to be the free part, but can people contribute a little? And it's a tough thing to do because normally the people that are being helped are the poorest of the poor or real strife in terms of their situation. really good management talent, and I think this is a calling. So I don't think people go there unless they've been called to do this. You need really good trustees, and you have to think like an entrepreneur. You have to constantly think what money sources are out there, and you need venture capital. And it's the kind of stuff that you would see on Shark Tank or on, oh my gosh, the Dragon's Den. And then you start merging and you look at strategic alliances. Tough area to survive. So if we look at the different forces that shape our industry, I think the simple truth is, the stronger each of these forces, the more difficult it is to survive in an industry. So how easy or how difficult it is to survive a particular industry will depend on the strength of these forces. Guys, you can 100% put an NB, not maybe next to this one. Yeah, you can. Then I can guarantee you that this will be a question in the exam. So slide 15 onwards will be a question in the exam. You can put an NB. If it's not a question, I will give you money, okay, if this is not a question. So when we look at Porter's five forces, and just remember, you've done Porter's five forces a number of times, but this to me, and this is often a big question, this is obviously a lot of marks allocated. So this is non-negotiable. You need to be able to do this literally at any time when you're asked. It must also almost be as natural to yourself as telling people what your name is. So in terms of Porter's five forces, I think the first one is we need to remember that there's certain caveats, there's certain limitations. It's very good at strategic business level. So it's fantastic, at a business level where you generally would have the kind of strategies that would relate to differentiation or cost or focus and the combination of those. You have to understand that these five forces also will be impacted by the pestle factors, and I know that's logical. And we need to remember that they are interrelated. They all don't rely 100% on each other. They're not interdependent. And we also have to remember that the way that this theory was originally created, it suggested that every industry is a hostile environment, when in reality, we now see competitors work together in an industry. It's not always hostility that you'll encounter. We see it in the auto industry, and I'm so sorry to default to that, but there is a significant level of technology sharing we know that Renaults are built by Nissan in Roslyn, for example. So we know that. Toyota recently started putting their badges onto Suzukis and calling them Toyotas. So this is not always hostility that you encounter in terms of this industry. So let's look at the first one. Yeah, the level of competition. So monopolies, give me examples of monopolies in South Africa and tell me what they have in common. Give me examples of monopolies in South Africa and what they have in common. Come on, that can't be that difficult to answer.
Yeah, the first one I thought of was Eskom.
Eskom, yeah. And what do we associate with Eskom?
Mismanagement.
Mismanagement, inefficiency, no service delivery. And if we think of similar companies or similar SEOs, state-owned organizations, which one is that?
I know Telkom's private now.
Telkom's
Telkom
private?
Used to be state-owned, I'm sure.
Was a mess. Yeah.
Post Transnet?
Go for it, Chris.
Transnet?
Transnet, absolute mess as well. The post office, constantly having to be bailed out. I don't even know why we have a post office anymore. I'm so hoping that no one here works for these companies. Anyone work for any of those? I wouldn't admit it because I'll take 25% in your next assignment just to be spiteful. Okay, so we have a couple of those, but it often is an industry that is dictated by inefficiency, mismanagement, etc. You're right, Steph, about that one. And then perfect competition, yeah, here you have tons of competitors. I mean, when we look at the auto industry, and it's always an interesting exercise to do this, and I don't know if I've done it, and if I have done it, tell me immediately so I can stop. But I always find the auto industry very interesting. If we had to start from A and play across the letters, what cars would go under A? What brands would be A? Alpha, obviously, Audi would be there. Any others? Obviously, Aston Martin would be in there. We go B, what are the Bs?
Bentley.
Nomasanto is a future tenderpreneur, guys. 5 million or something, aren't they? Chris, BMW.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Kyle drives one, but he's just irritating me now. No, not Kyle, who said they drive one. BMW, what others? Can someone see it? Yeah, Cole, also a future tenderpreneur, boy. Bugatti, other Bs. There's something called the Bake or something, BAIC.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we go C, and here we've seen some of these disappear from South Africa. Chev is the obvious one, not in South Africa. What C's are there? So it's Cherry.
Cherry, Citroen.
Citroen. Do we still have China in this country? I don't even think they exist anymore. But guys, the reality is, it is a very tough industry to be part of. The D's, obviously, Datsun is not here anymore. I don't think we sell new Datsuns. But
Was it Dodge, I believe?
Dodge, yeah, I think, is Dodge still in the country? I think they are. They're part of Stellantis, I think, of the Stellantis group. I'm sure they're part of the Stellantis group. But if you go through this, guys, it is an interesting exercise to see what a tough industry is and how much innovation and the strive for efficiency and adding extra bling to these different vehicles. So often in terms of perfect competition, we see this with the Chinese brands, very difficult to protect, and often some people share innovations. Profit margins are tight, are very, very tight. And then you find your unique market position. And if your brand is Mercedes, you have your unique market position. And then oligopolies, give me examples of where we have a number of competitors limited to a few, not too many oligopolies in South Africa. And we've got a couple of these.
The banks.
The banks, 100%. And it's become a tough industry to survive, in particular with Time Bank becoming a reality. Not that I understand how Time Bank works, to be honest with you. The banking industry. The food retail industry, how many have we got? 5, 6. The cell phone provider industry, how many do we have? 3, 2? I don't know if we have 3 anymore, to be honest with you, because they share towers and they share other things. And again, this is the ideal in terms of your customer. This is the least ideal. And here, yeah, I don't think customers get a great shake anyway. So in terms of how this industry component makes it tough or not, you need to look at the number and size, and it's often the kind of the equal competitors. And again, we need to realize that Volvo, BMW, and Audi and Mercedes don't compete with the rest. And again, there's some blurred lines with those now, and all those Chinese vehicles now compete with Toyota, those sort of best value type brands. Yeah, how quick the industry is growing. I don't think the auto industry in South Africa is going to grow much faster going into the future. I know that there was some growth. And then also, yeah, the differentiation. How tough do we make it for somebody to move away from our brand? You think of the Apple prison, for example, and then also fixed costs. I think the truth is, if you have high fixed costs and that you have, a lack of the need to replace goods all the time, tough to survive. Right. And then, guys, yeah, the other things we need to be concerned about, yeah, expansion, the idea of large expansions in terms of companies becoming more efficient, building more efficient factories, how tough it is to leave. And we know that it's tough to leave because you have your dealerships, you've got your factories and all of those assembly plants that you've got to walk away from. And then also your strategies. If you think of Volkswagen, they'll have everything from low cost right through to value for money, right through to differentiation as part of their makeup. Threat of new entrants. And this is where the auto industry has become this. Oh my gosh, I forgot to share this slide with you guys. I wanted to share this slide in terms of industry success factors, just to bear out what Gemma Watt was saying. Yeah, I think this is such a new industry that people are still learning what the factors are. Go for it, Kyle.
So what are your thoughts on EV and South Africa?
Okay, so EV if you have solar, Boyo, and you've got your own way of generating electricity, EVs are a very good idea. You're still not going to travel to Joburg and back on an EV. The way we create electricity, it is not ideal, although we see EVs on the road. If you lived in Switzerland, if you lived in Finland, etc., wonderful, wonderful idea. And that's why Toyota has gone the hybrid route, the sort of, EV where your engine actually charges it, but you can actually drive on electricity as well. I don't believe electric is the future, but I'm being proven wrong on that. I believe that hydrogen is the future. Chris, this is your field, Boya. Sorry, Kyle, what do you think of EVs?
I think the hybrid is the right solution for South Africa, but I read an article recently saying that 2030 South Africa will go fully into that.
Yeah,
especially in Europe, that's going to be a part of their rules and regulations on any new car sold.
Yep. Yeah, and there the electricity isn't made burning coal fires. Most of the electricity is
except for
generated.
London, they're burning.
Yeah, well, London is a strange one for me. Chris?
Doc, I drive an EV, so I can speak.
Oh, which EV do you drive?
I've got a Volvo C40, and I've had it for a year now.
Okay, what is your distance you can travel if you travel decently?
On a charge, I travel about 400 Ks. And then I've got solar at home, and at work. I mean, we've got a fast charger at work.
Oh.
I promise you, I don't think I'll ever drive another car in my life. I'm 0 to 100 in 3.6 seconds.
Yeah, no, we know that.
What about the sound factor, man?
What?
That would kill me.
Petrol head.
Look,
I'm huge into that.
The thing is, if you wanna beat me from 0 to 100, you're gonna have to spend 6 million rand.
Yeah, we'll see. What about a 911?
It's close. It's 911 is I think 3.2 seconds. So that 3.3. The GTR S3 is 2.9, and that's a 6 million rand car. So your everyday
gift.
Yeah, GTI driving. But on a serious note, I agree. We also offer hybrids, and it's the way to go. On a hybrid, I think our hybrids give 2.1 liters per 100 kilometers on average fuel consumption. So, that's just absolute. But you're right.
Car manufacturers they're clever. You go look at the new Land Rover, you go get the Defender, you got the hybrid if you want that option. It pushes out, I don't know the correct stats, but then as soon as the electric is gone, you with a 2.2 petrol motor, and it can barely tow the thing.
That's true, but it's got generative braking to assist in charging your battery. If you drive correctly, you won't.
But let's be honest, the average South African doesn't drive correctly.
Ask Cole about that. Pile?
Definitely agree on that.
I enjoy my EV, but I agree we're not there yet. I think there's about over 300 charging stations in the country. All major routes has got them. I mean, we've driven down to Cape Town, and you stop twice for 35 minutes, right? If you really want to drive one in one
You can
trip.
go to the Wimpy.
Yeah, that's exactly the
I
point.
mean,
But,
going up to Joburg, there's that one there in Harrismith, that
yeah,
halfway point. There's one there, the
there's,
Jaguar.
there's actually 3 on the way there now. So
Is it?
if you stop at the first one and it's not available or something, you can stop at the second one, and then the third one's Harry Smith.
But I see Audi have denied any claims to change their whole model into EV.
Yeah, they're going backwards. They delaying it. I think the Paris Agreement says what, 2040? I think, if I'm not mistaken, Doc.
And that just proves that Audi is just superior.
Yeah.
They've also stopped manufacturing EVs in Germany.
Yeah, so Norway's already at 100% of all new cars sold is EVs. Say with Denmark, Switzerland's almost there. Sweden, look, that's a different country. If you go to Sweden, every car, you'll struggle to find another brand than Volvo in Sweden.
Yeah.
I've been there a few times, so trust. But in South Africa, I don't believe we're there yet, but we're getting there faster than we think.
Okay, guys, let's move on. That was that. Thank you so much for that, guys. Yeah, I mean, sorry, the rest of you, the electric and petrol heads have got slightly distracted. I'll edit this out. Okay, guys, in terms of threat of new entrants, now we know this is where the Chinese. I know that there's a new Chinese Bucky from Cherry double cab, which I think is going to take a big dent out of Ford and Toyota's double cab market, but we'll see when it gets here. Yeah, what prevents that from happening? Economies of scale. Obviously, economies of scale, the more you manufacture, you reduce the per unit cost of an item. Very difficult to get economies of scale, but when you deal with global brands, it's easy to get economies of scale. Cost of entry, capital cost of entry. Let's be honest, things are manufactured overseas. They're not manufactured here. Control of distribution channels. Often existing competitors would band together. Again, we've seen that it's become very tough in South Africa to do that. Yeah, and this idea of existing relationships between competitors. I know a couple of years ago, competitors kept the Tata Nano out of the country, which was going to launch and destroy the second-hand car industry completely, and that was simply just because the existing brands got together. This was in about 2010, I would imagine. And then just also, yeah, the experience curve, very, very difficult. And we see how, because India has been manufacturing cars for longer, the experience curve is showing in terms of the quality that they manufacture. The Chinese are still catching up to that. And then what will happen from a retaliation perspective? We often see, and now that we don't have many airlines, we used to see these price wars in airlines. We also see a little bit of retaliation when new competitors arrive in the food retail industry. And then legal restraints. Obviously, governments can step in and prevent new competition come in. I think the reason we don't have more cell phone providers is because there's a piece of legislation that protects them. The reason we don't have an alternative to the post office is because there's a piece of legislation. The same with Eskom. And then also the uniqueness of existing products. Guys, so the kinds of substitutes, and substitutes is a little bit difficult to explain. And remember, try and not confuse your substitute as your competitor, etc. So in terms of substitutes, for me, the substitutes for normal taxis and meter taxis would be Uber. Right, for me, that is the kind of substitute. But you could argue that's the competitor. But I don't, and perhaps a better example would be in terms of rail versus taxi. A substitute for rail would be taxi, and we know that we've got a couple of rail systems that are still running. Substitution of need is an interesting one, where you have this idea of getting new services, killing off existing services. Think of what had happened when you got your cell phone and you had Google Maps. Who still has a TomTom, or I can't even remember what the other one was called, TomTom or...
My mom has a Garmin.
Garmin, yeah, Steph, yeah,
And
the Garmin.
if you don't update the software every second weekend, navigating the roads is a nightmare because the maps are old and
They're
there's
old,
so
yeah.
much construction going on between Hillcrest and Pietermaritzburg at the moment.
Yeah. Who, can I just ask, who still uses a Garmin? Yeah, no, my car just defaults to my phone, and that's always Google
Owen got
Maps.
stolen.
So go for it, Kyle.
Owen got stolen.
Yours got stolen.
Yeah.
Oh my word. Yeah.
Mm.
And they also dated, as Steph says, they dated. And I believe that the new thing that I can't, my car just won't let me use it, is Waze. Apparently Waze is very good as an alternative to Google Maps, although Google has
Waze
bought
is
Waze.
the best one.
Yeah, Google has
Waze keeps
bought
you out of
Waze.
trouble.
Sorry, Kyle.
Waze is
Cole,
the best
sorry?
one by far.
Is it? I need to move. My car won't allow me to use it. It's full of nonsense. Okay, guys, and then generic substitution. This is when money gets tight, and it's quite interesting when you read into the research. Often people will have to decide. I mean, think of being at varsity and not working. Your choice is often: do I buy food or do I buy alcohol? And I'm so sorry to make out that students are habitual drinkers, but unfortunately, I was one of those a very, very long time ago. So it's where you have to decide, do I buy airtime or do I buy food? Or do I buy airtime or do I buy new clothes? What is more important, airtime or new clothes? If you're a student, I promise you airtime is more important. Okay. What is more important if you're a student, food or alcohol, guys?
Alcohol.
Be like behind your BMW steering as well. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else want to tell me food or alcohol?
If you ask that question to some grown-ups, the answer is still alcohol.
Still alcohol. It's a tough one. Generic substitution. Airtime. Now, most of you will be on contracts. Airtimes or clothes? What's more important? I don't need either because I'm on contract. But
Alcohol.
for students, yeah, you're gonna do well in those multiple choice exams where A, food, B, B, clothes, alcohol. You make up your own answer. Generic substitution where it's about disposable income. Okay, guys, in terms of bargaining power of buyers, now we know that this is where you can have groups of buyers that band together that put a lot of pressure on the seller. So if Pick and Pay is your buyer and you are their supplier, and I know this is not the ideal scenario because I'm going to confuse you, but if Pick and Pay is the buyer, very difficult to negotiate, tough. There's stories that if you negotiate with Pick and Pay and you bring along boxing gloves, they'll arrive with a knife. You know, it's that kind of scenario. We also see in terms of townships where an entire township maybe boycotts a spa or something. It is possible for groups of buyers to actually make it difficult for an organization. The interesting one was when people found out that Shell was doing the seismic testing, the seismic blasting, looking for oil and gas deposits along an area, a protected area. A vast number of South Africans stopped using Shell. I don't know if you guys were aware of that people were boycotting Shell because of that seismic blasting. I've never used Shell. I go to BP because I get extra points from them. Anyone ever been part of that kind of boycott of a product, etc., to put pressure on companies? Because I mean, definitely Shell was one of them. And I think Shell's left the country, haven't they?
They just announced now. I think there's about over 280 petrol stations that they are closing down.
Is that where Astron is coming in? Because I'm not sure where Astron is.
Astron overtook from Caltex.
Oh, okay.
Astron Energies. That's the original name, and I think it's a sister company having the petrol station. I think it's an American brand as well. American
Which
company.
one is that, Boya?
Astron.
Astron. Okay. Yeah. So other things that determine whether the buyers have power, switching costs, very difficult. And I know that the Apple people say that this is not true, but I think if you're with Apple, it's very difficult to leave Apple. I think you're so locked into it that they have a customer for life. Is that an unfair comment from the Apple users? Quickly tell me. Does Apple lock you in for life? Is it an Apple prison?
I can't comment because I'm just a recently new Apple user. So.
Are you there for life now, Nomasanto?
I don't know. Well, I mean,
did they send you the keys to the cell, or do they actually send just the cell in the Apple prison?
Probably just the cell.
Anyone else? I think Apple has this way of locking you in. Maybe I'm just being full of nonsense. Where's the other Apple user? Yeah, I don't know. Guys, backward vertical integration. Yeah, so here the buyer actually buys the supplier, very, very risky then, and then obviously controls the supply chain. And then price to cost. I think if the purchase price is a small fraction of the total cost, yeah, I think often that buyers will then be reluctant to shop around, and they'll again be locked into your brand. And then information, and that's why information is so important, and these kind of price comparison sites. The more information customers have, the more likely they are to have a lot of power in terms of this relationship. Guys, and then suppliers, yeah. If there are few suppliers, you are locked into one. I mean, if you think of our cell phone providers, you are either with MTN or you're with Vodacom, or you are with, I think they're the only main providers anyway. High switching costs when it's difficult to move because of a patent they own, because of a strategic relationship. Again, the supplier will have a significant amount of power. Forward vertical integration, where the supplier gets closer to the customer, or if there are no substitutes and you have to use a particular product. And then lastly, if there's a single industry and we know that you supply a single industry and it's the only supplier in that industry, I think often the customer will be in serious trouble. Guys, I'll finish off here. Complementary relationships I mentioned earlier. Complementaries are those things that allow you to use your product better. So your phone is really just a piece of metal with buttons, metal and plastic and glass with buttons. What makes your phone fantastic are the apps that you download. Those are the complementaries, are those companies that design apps and write it in the platform that your phone is in. Anyone want to share an interesting app that they can't do without? An interesting app that they cannot do without. The obvious one for me is always going to be Google Maps. I travel between Pietermaritzburg and Westville once a week, and I travel, and Google Maps is an invaluable part of every single bit of travel. Also, I have no sense of direction. Guys, yeah. I'm trying to rush, and this will be the last one, guys. So complementors, I think, first of all, when you are looking at your complementors, look at the number of complementors that are there. Look at how those complementors affect your switching costs. Yeah, also unbundling your complementary products. So often when you, for example, get a laptop and it's got Windows on there, there's so many complementaries built in, but there are also complementaries that you have to download and some that you might have to pay for. Again, yeah, this idea of integration, whether the complementaries are going to launch their own products. And then visibility, obviously, the greater the visibility, the greater the need for a specific complementor, as well as the market growth. I'll leave it there, guys. Any questions, any comments? Sorry, everyone who aren't petrol heads and I don't know, EV heads. We wonder